So Advent is fully upon us now. Are we excited? Good. I'm glad. Now, our house, we are a little slow in our Christmas preparations this year. We have yet to put our tree up. We were supposed to go yesterday to get said tree, but it was a little snowy, so we decided to forego that. So hopefully later on today we will get out and get the tree. But eventually we will get the tree. And eventually it will get decorated, and eventually we will get closer and closer to Christmas. Can you believe Christmas Eve is a mere 2 weeks away? Unbelievable, I know. But if you're anything like me, the scripture that Tony read for us today leaves you a bit wanting. Because, we come to Advent, we are waiting for Jesus to come again. We come to Advent waiting to hear about all those things that we hear about during Advent. Mary and Joseph and angels and so on and so forth. And Mark gives us none of that. None of that. All we get at the very beginning of Mark is this passage that deals with the coming of John the Baptist, and John the Baptist being the harbinger, the proclaimer of Jesus. And you got to be wondering, what is up with that? If you look at the other two synoptic gospels, synoptic being Matthew, Mark, and Luke, right? John is its own entity in and of itself. But if you look at the other two gospels, Matthew and Luke, both of them have birth narratives. Mark forgoes that altogether. Even John, who was written at a different time with a story that runs parallel to but is very different from the other three. Even John takes 18 verses at the beginning of chapter 1 to explain to us that Jesus is the Messiah. From Mark, we get some prophecy from Isaiah and John the Baptist out screaming in the wilderness and dunking people in the water. That's what we get. And in fact, fellow preacher Dennis Sanders puts it this way. He says this: I've always considered Mark the oddball gospel because it begins and ends so abruptly. There's no ramping up or winding down to the story. It just starts with this guy named John who lives in the desert eating bugs and wearing uncomfortable clothing. He tells people that the promised one is coming and calls on them to be baptized, a sign of the renewal taking place in their hearts. John cites Isaiah 40 to say that Jesus is coming, so get ready. Mark skips everything else about the birth narrative and the entrance of Jesus into ministry. Clearly, that piece is not important to him. Otherwise, it would be in there, right? Which makes me really wonder about Mark. I mean, most of us, me included, consider Christmas to be a central part of not only the Christian year, but to the story of Jesus. And Mark blows right past that. Gives us just this little bit of John the Baptist in Isaiah 40 and expects us to take it on faith that this guy is the Messiah. Clearly, the people that were reading Mark, the audience that Mark was writing to, already knew that Jesus was the Messiah. He wasn't interested in spending time re-explaining what these people already knew. I want a little bit more. I want to see the lovely, cuddly, wonderful baby Jesus lying in a manger and in a stable. I want to see all that. I want to experience that again in Mark's gospel, and Mark ain't going to do it. Mark is not going to bend to my desires to want to see a baby Jesus or hear a birth narrative. Mark is doing his own thing in a way that I think is a bit unexpected. He doesn't care about our wants or desires. He isn't willing to share what he doesn't want to share. And you can tell he's keeping it to a minimum as you read through the Gospel of Mark, because the phrase, "and immediately Jesus went," takes place 7 or 8 times throughout the retelling that Mark gives us. And immediately Jesus went. Well, I want a bit more, don't you? This is Christmas. Where's my angels and my wise men and the shepherds and all that good stuff that we're so used to? I tell you, Mark is doing something unexpected. And I think the reason that we don't go into the birth narrative right now, and especially don't spend time on it in Mark, is because God is trying to speak to us about something bigger than simply the things that we already know. God is hoping to use the unexpected to open us up to the possibilities that God has for us. Certainly, if I invited you guys to go out to the Mississippian to meet some guy who was wearing, cow's hide with the hair hanging on the outside to get dunked in the water now, you'd think I was a bit nutty. This is what John the Baptist was doing. He's standing out in the River Jordan, which near Jerusalem, around Jericho, which is the area that folks from Jerusalem would have gone to. It's about the size of the Mississippian. That's what Jesus is doing. He's dunking people in something equivalent to the Mississippian. And John is doing that to invite them to think about what is going on inside their hearts and to think about something new. It is shocking and unexpected. And reminds me of a story that some of you have heard before, but I'm going to tell it again because I love it. And it's one that I think speaks to this experience that we have, the disconnect between what we expect during Advent and what Mark gives us. A number of years ago, when I was serving Richardson Park up in Wilmington, I had the opportunity to preach at Highfield, which used to be the Masonic Home of Delaware. It's now called something else. They've changed hands. But back when it was Highfield, every year I got invited by a couple in my congregation to go and preach the second or third Sunday in Advent. I don't know why it was always Advent, but it was always Advent. I'm okay with that. Other than I'm busier than a one-armed paper hanger and I'm trying to get a bunch of other stuff done, I'm okay with that. So this year I was really behind the gun. And I'd done it a couple years in the past, so I kind of knew what to expect. So I wasn't interested in putting a lot of work into the message that I was going to bring. I thought I was going to be nice. I thought I was going to be simple. I thought I was going to say something nice about Christmas. So I dug back into my archives and found a seminary paper I wrote in my preaching class, just a homily. It was only about 2 pages long. And I pulled that out. It was on Colossians 3, and it dealt with Jesus inviting us to do the unexpected. And that was to become more like him, to let go of our control, to let go of all the stuff that's holding us back, and to become more like Jesus. This is great. Put this together with some babies and shepherds and angels and stuff, and we'll make it into a Christmas message. Fine. So I did that. It took me about an hour. Pulled it together, turned it into 5 pages, and off I went. So that was on Saturday. Sunday, the afternoon comes. I've preached the morning service at Park, and the family that invited me said, well, we'd be happy to drive you. I said, no, I'm gonna bring Sarah and the kids this year. It'll be something a little bit different. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I did it anyway. So Sarah and the kids came along, and we met them up at Highfield, the Masonic Home. And what they do for worship at 3 o'clock in the afternoons on Sundays is they take one of the activity rooms and they put a bunch of chairs in there and throw up a lectern and wheel a piano out from a closet, a little stand-up deal. And that's how they do worship. They turn it into a chapel, at about the same size as our chapel here in the sanctuary. That's kind of about the space that we're talking about. So there's like 4 or 5 rows of chairs, and then in the back they left a big space so they can park wheelchairs for residents that are coming down. So we got there about 15, 20 minutes early. We talk over the service with the hosts. Sarah and the kids go to sit down. And this is, the kids are much younger than they are now. This is probably 6 or 7 years ago. And so the boys, who would have been, I think Donnie may have been in school. Sammy was almost in school. They'd sat through one worship service. They've been to Sunday school that day. They were not interested in sitting around. So the minute they sit there and get them sat down, they're up and moving about. And of course, there's new and interesting people to go up and talk to. And they're church kids, so they're used to that. They're used to people being there and talking to anybody who's kind of in the room. So they're off and about. And then, of course, the folks at Highfield made the mistake of putting the cookies in the punch out before the service. So the kids are instantly over there hanging out at that, and Sarah's trying to beat them back. So the residents start coming in. Some are with canes, some come with walkers. Number get rolled in wheelchairs. This one guy comes in, walks without any other assistance down to the very front row, and sits right there. So if my lectern were right here, he's sitting right here where this basket is, like 3 feet from me. He's invading my personal preacher space, and I don't like it. I am not a happy camper. But I'm okay. I'm going to tolerate this. This is what church is all about. So we get ready to start the service, and my hosts are leading all the worship parts. And they've included, because we're getting close to Christmas, 6 Christmas carols in the program, in the worship experience. Because nothing better than singing around Christmas. Everybody knows the tunes. Even most pastors will tell you, even with Alzheimer's or dementia patients, they remember the words to those songs, which was good because the songbooks that were at Highfield at the Masonic Home were these massive, like 14 by 12 things that were impossible for even me to hold and try and sing from. So the residents just, they didn't even want to try for the most part. The guy in front of me, he had his, but everybody else, they were going to go without. So we get ready to start, and liturgy begins, and we get into the first carol, which is "O Come All Ye Faithful." And I instantly realized a number of different things are happening all at the same time. So first of all, the woman that they got to accompany the music was a last-minute stand-in for somebody else who had gotten sick, and it was a member of the Eastern Star Order that this couple, the wife of this couple attended, and who helped out when this worship experience rolled around. So she was over there banging away, and what she lacked in technical prowess, she made up for in volume. So she's pounding away over in the corner. I don't know if she was trying to cover up for what was going on behind her or not, but she's banging away on a piano that hadn't been tuned, I think, in 150 years. They must have inherited it that way, and no piano tuner had come near it in the time that it had been at Highfield. So she's banging away on an off-tuned piano. We've got my boys running around the back. We've got residents that don't have songbooks. And it's at this point that I realize why the guy is sitting right here in front of me, because he wants to hear the message and he can't hear a thing. So he's singing along so that he can hear himself right, which means he's twice the volume of everybody else in the room. And he's a measure ahead and off key. I don't know what to do with this. I am absolutely blown away by this cacophony of noise. And this is not even through the first stanza of the first carol. Okay. Let's see. 45 minutes, I think. We're 5 minutes in. I got 40 minutes to go, baby. Okay, God, speed it up. Speed it up. So I get up to give my message, and I run through the 5 pages that I've got. Now, I'm hoping to impress them with my knowledge, because again, this is a seminary paper, right? So I've got it all figured out. I've put the best theology I can find on Advent and Colossians and speaking to God in the unexpected, and off we go. So I wind my way through that. We get into the closing hymns. There's not just one hymn at the end, there's 2. We do Angels We Have Heard on High, right into Joy to the World. You know the Gloria, Gloria at the end of Angels We Have Heard on High? Oh, we're singing that, and I have never heard anything like that before, nor since then. Everybody's picking a different part, and nobody's singing the same. That was a Gloria to remember. So we get through that, and as we transition to Joy to the World, I had to sit down because it struck me that maybe the reason that I was there that day was not so that I could impress these residents with my knowledge of Colossians, or with the seminary work that I did 5 years ago, or with my ability to preach, which was off that day to begin with because of this guy sitting right here and all the rest that was going on. And maybe I was there to learn something new in the unexpected. And what struck me at that moment is that maybe, just maybe, the choir that the shepherds heard that night in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago might have sounded something like I was seeing in front of me, because it was people singing with all their might, because that's one thing that they had. When you're in a nursing home, a lot of stuff gets taken away from you. Your freedom, your mobility, all kinds of things are taken away, but nobody can take away your love of song or your love of Scripture. And these people were here to celebrate and rejoice in the midst of that, and I was dumbfounded. I had to sit down. And it's hard for me even to think about that without tearing up, because it was so profound. That maybe what God doesn't ask from us is perfection. God asks for us what we got. And God wants to use that in totally unexpected ways. Whether that be in a nursing home up in Wilmington on a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, or that be anywhere out in downtown Milford at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. God is always ready to reveal to us something unexpected and always inviting us to take that and do something with it. And it really caused me to go back and rethink about the way that I experienced Christmas and I experienced the gospel message. So maybe Mark isn't all that far off. By pointing us to the unexpected, Mark is shaking us out of our complacency. Mark is saying that we don't need comfort or riches to be happy. What we need is an appreciation of God at work in our lives. What we need is to take the idols in our lives, which Mark is more than happy to help us smash, and let go of them. Money, cars, football, I don't know what it is for you. But there's always something that seems to get in the way of that relationship with God, isn't there? Even in my life. There's 100 things that'll take that place if I'm not careful. And then God will take that and God will use that. Those aha moments when we are at our most vulnerable because God has revealed something totally unbelievable to us that oftentimes was right there the whole time. I'm embarrassed by the fact that it took me to the very last hymn to realize how beautiful that experience was. But I'm so happy that God showed it to me. Which is why I like to bring it up and preach about it, because it gets me every time. I'm preaching to myself right now. You guys are all just along for the ride. But be open to what God is going to do that might be totally different. Whether it not be wearing a hat and scarf and mittens when it's 72 degrees when you're going to get your Christmas tree, or hearing this crazy cacophony of people just totally singing off, out of key, out of tune, or something completely different than that. God will speak to us if we are open to that possibility. And then God will invite us to take that out and use it to touch other lives, to show people what difference Christ has made in our lives. So I invite you to do that this Advent season. In the midst of the Christmas carols on the radio, the songs playing across the mall speakers when you go, the decorating of the tree, the things that your family does to celebrate the season. Look for the unexpected, even in those little moments. And God will reveal to you something totally unbelievable and amazing. Praise be to God. Amen.